Adam Burke, President and CEO of Discover LA. A pleasure to talk to you here in London.
Lovely to be here in London after 2 years.
Absolutely. LA doesn't need any introduction, but it needs, I would imagine, constant reassessment.
That's absolutely true. That's one of the things I love about LA is it's continuously evolving. I mean, even over the past 2 years, there's been so much that's been happening. New product, continued investment in infrastructure. So you're right, the LA experience is continuously changing.
One of the things, and we'll get to it straight away, is that because either it's certainly not an accident, but it's fortuitous timing, is there is a huge amount of sporting events to look forward to over the next year. So give us the highlights.
Well, I think it goes back to the old expression, I'd rather be lucky than smart.
Okay.
Coming out of the pandemic, we do have this just unprecedented decade of major sporting events. So in addition, we have these incredible new facilities. So SoFi Stadium is now the home of the NFL's Rams and Chargers, and they'll be hosting the Super Bowl on February 13th. But we have
for anyone who doesn't realize, the Super Bowl is the single biggest sporting event on the American calendar, without precedent or equal anywhere, virtually.
I think that's a fair characterization. Now, I would say it's certainly nowhere along the scale and scope of World Cup.
Okay, sure.
But within
the United States, yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll have the Super Bowl in February, but then we have 1 or 2 major events virtually every year for the balance of the decade. So we also have Major League Baseball's All-Star Game next year that was rescheduled from 2020. In 2023, we have the College Football Playoff National Championship Game, as well as for the PGA Tour, the U.S. Open for golf. In 2024, we're actually hosting IPW, which is, is the industry's largest trade show. And then we're in consideration to be one of the host cities for World Cup in 26, and then certainly leading up to the granddaddy at them all with the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 28.
Okay, so that's, if you are into your sport, then Los Angeles is definitely a city that needs to be on your calendar of planning.
Well, 100%. And the other thing I'll say is, year-round, there are now incredible spectator sports to enjoy. A good example is LA Football Club plays at Banc of California Stadium, which actually is a beautiful new facility. They were only open for a season or two before the pandemic. And in the spring, we're going to be welcoming the first women's professional soccer team, Angel City Football Club. And that's actually a fascinating story. It was actually started by the actor Natalie Portman because she really wanted to focus on pay equity in sports. So she's partnered with a number of prominent members of the U.S. women's national team, people like Julie Foudy, Megan Rapinoe, to really elevate the sport. Yeah. So Angel City will be coming to LA in the spring as well.
And a mistake that I made, LAFC is not LA Galaxy, so you have your choice of football teams to follow in LA.
It's amazing how in just a few short seasons that has become a tremendous rivalry. So the LA, LA Galaxy, who obviously everyone knows, Beck's played with the Galaxy for
Robbie
a while.
Keane. For Irish visitors, it's Robbie Keane.
And then Zlatan was there for a few years. Meanwhile, LAFC's come in and just in 3 or 4 seasons had a great deal of success. So the rivalry when those two teams play is remarkable.
And of course, you've got like a small town basketball team called the Lakers, and
they're a modest little team.
Yeah.
They've
Stars.
had some nominal success. Yeah. So whether it be the Lakers, the Dodgers, the thing I love about the LA sports scene, it's this wonderful mix of old meets new. So you have these storied facilities like Chavez Ravine, home of the Dodgers, Staples Center, which has become such an icon for Los Angeles, and then these incredible new facilities like Banc of California Stadium, SoFi Stadium in Hollywood Park, and then massive renovations at things like the LA Memorial Coliseum, which is one of the primary venues for the Olympic Games.
Sure. And this is something that can be sold. So if you're selling an LA itinerary, it's easy enough to incorporate sports or attendance to a major sporting event into an itinerary.
Very much so. I mean, the thing is, with so many professional sports teams, it's actually interesting. We looked at it. Los Angeles has more professional sports venues and teams than any other city in the U.S.
Okay.
So no matter what time of year you come, you're likely to have some type of professional sport that you can enjoy. And, beyond that, for those people who are more thrill seekers, there are things like the Porsche Experience Center, where if you want to take a hot lap with the driver, you can, but you can also drive yourself.
Oh, you can?
There might be a slight waiver you have to sign first, but you get to take your own hot lap in a Porsche. So, for people who are sport fans, there's always something to do in Los Angeles.
Now, for those who aren't sport fans, what is new in LA, certainly in the last couple of years, since we were last able to visit?
So I guess I divide it into a few categories. The first thing is, may not be sexy, but infrastructure.
No. I mean, what, the city that always frightens people, have to drive everywhere? Infrastructure's huge.
Yeah, I completely agree. So one of the things I love is we now actually, the city's tourism department has developed a tourism master plan that is really focused on infrastructure, issues of mobility, what do we do to make sure that it's a positive guest experience. And I think one of the primary things you have to talk about is Los Angeles International Airport. So LAX is right now in the midst of a $14 billion modernization. Actually makes it the largest public works program in the country. And they are addressing all of the things that I think we all know as international travelers have been challenges. So a wonderful example is if, pre-pandemic you flew into LAX, the likelihood is you were going to you flew on Aer Lingus, you had to park it on the tarmac, you had to take a bus in. So one of the things through the pandemic, and I'm always looking for silver linings, I have to be honest, is it's been an accelerant to capital improvements. So they've built what are called the West Gates at Tom Bradley Terminal. And it's flexible gates that give us an additional 12 to 15 gates where it can accommodate everything from the largest Airbus all the way down to a 737. And that's why it's flexible 12 to 15. But it's dedicated out at Tom Bradley, and it was delivered months ahead of schedule. So it's actually operational since May. So what it means, it's going to be a much better arrival experience for people flying into LAX. Beyond that, they're doing things like we have a monorail, an automated people mover that's going to be complete within the next 24 months. And it will bring people seamlessly between gates. We'll also have a direct connector on Metro, so you can get on a train at LAX and go directly downtown. All the things that we know for a world-class airport are necessities, and they've been doing a remarkable job of pushing that project forward.
And it is worth also highlighting, even though it's not a new thing, but for some people who maybe haven't been to LA for a while, that the metro goes from downtown to Santa Monica, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So it means effectively is that the city becomes much more manageable to those who don't live there and maybe don't know the geography as well as an Angelino.
I think that's exactly right. So first of all, just in terms of our mass transit system, it's become much more navigable, much easier to use. And I think one of the keys, honestly, Fian, is how you enable technology. Because there are several different providers if you go across the broader Los Angeles region. So there are ways that you can very easily use things on your smartphone to know what's the quickest way to get from downtown Los Angeles to, for example, Venice Beach or Santa Monica. The other things that have changed, was what we were saying at the outset, the culinary scene continues to just grow exponentially. Certainly the restaurants really struggled throughout the pandemic, so we've done whatever we can to support them. But there are all these incredibly new, exciting concepts coming to LA. A great example is we're sister cities with Mexico City, and there's a wonderful restaurant there called Cha Cha Cha. The owners wanted to open a sister restaurant in LA. So they just opened it, and it's a great example of the LA dining scene because it's this gorgeous rooftop terrace down in the Arts District. And there have been so many of these new openings. Another example is if you've got music fans. We have hip-hop royalty who have decided that they missed New York pizza. So the daughters of Notorious B.I.G. and Jam Master Jay, who was the DJ for Run DMC, they've opened Juicy Pizza in Venice Beach, and you can get a New York slice sitting there on Venice Beach. And then I think the last piece is, really talking about hotel supply. It's been remarkable. When you look at really confidence in a market, I look at where developers are putting their money. We actually still have 17 new hotel projects opening this year alone. And that's at virtually every price point. So, there's been a huge boom in boutique properties. Things like the Proper in downtown Los Angeles, the new Fairmont. If people remember the old Century Plaza Hotel, it's been taken down to the studs, and it's this beautiful new luxury boutique hotel. But we continue to add at every price point. So no matter what you're looking for, whether it's truly bespoke luxury boutique hotels, there's something for everyone.
And compared to pre-pandemic times, what kind of value for money are we looking at? Well, certainly for the foreseeable future.
Honestly, I think the first thing is, and you'll see this on our website at discoverlosangeles.com, there are itineraries for every budget, because we recognize everyone who may be coming to LA may have different things they want to do, but also have different budgetary constraints. So we have everything from LA on a budget to people who really are looking for more of a bespoke luxury experience. But you're right. Right now there are tremendous values because as our theme parks, our museums, our sport attractions come back online, we're all looking to recover from this. So I think it's a really attractive time. And the thing I would say, I'm in the same place, Fionn, which is I have credits with the airlines that I need to use. And so certainly that gives me the opportunity, now that that's a sunk cost from 2 years ago, I definitely plan on using more discretionary income to take advantage of experiences when I travel.
And while Los Angeles can be, of course, a end-of-trip reward when you've flown into San Francisco and driven down Route 1 all the way to LA, which is the preferred way to drive it because you want the ocean on your right.
Absolutely.
The Los Angeles has become even more accessible to Irish visitors with the return of the LA flight on Aer Lingus, which is coming back when?
Right now we're hearing the latter part of March.
Okay.
But our hope is that may be moved forward. For example, coming out of the UK, both BA and Virgin are now back to their 2019 levels of lift. So we have 3 nonstops a day on British Airways, we have 2 nonstops on Virgin, and we've seen a lot of the carriers internationally have had to advance their timetables because there's so much demand. So right now we're hearing the latter part of March, but it wouldn't shock me to see that advanced.
Really?
And if any of the team from Aer Lingus happen to be listening in, we would not at all be opposed to it coming back earlier.
Oh, I don't think anybody in Ireland would be opposed to it either. And then it's something that, I mean, we've been lucky enough at this Brand USA confab in London to meet so many CEOs from various DMOs across the states rather than. LA is no different to the rest of California in that you have health protocols that have been in place. And it is worth reiterating, and I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again, but because international passengers will need to be vaccinated before they're allowed into the United States, so the vaccine protocols that might be in place in LA become moot because you need it to get in, so you'll need it in LA as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say that. I think any conversation about this has to really start with health and safety.
Sure.
One of the best ways I've heard of describing it is we're moving from pandemic to endemic. COVID isn't necessarily going to miraculously vanish. We do, however, have these incredible vaccines that have been developed in record time. I mean, it's nothing short of miraculous that there are no fewer than half a dozen vaccines in use now. But the thing I'm really proud of, honestly, is the way that LA and actually the state of California as a whole has partnered from the outset with our public health officials. I think the first thing I would say to visitors and prospective visitors to Los Angeles is you can feel very confident that you're going to have a very safe but also very seamless experience. What I mean by that is, ever since the pandemic started, public health in Los Angeles County reached out to the industry. And they said, look, we know how to properly mitigate an airborne pathogen. We know how to do that scientifically. We don't understand how to operationalize that on your business. Yeah. So they actually formed an economic resiliency task force. And what I think was brilliant about it was they asked us, representing different industry sectors, to develop the protocols based on what we knew we could deliver and what would still be a positive guest experience. We then had to vet those through public health. And they would tell us, yes, that meets the scientific standard, or if it doesn't, we need to make modifications. But because of that tremendous partnership with LA County Public Health, what I think visitors from the UK and Ireland will find when they come to LA is, yes, it's incredibly safe, but it's also still a very positive experience.
And I think that that's the challenge that every destination has, is how to mitigate concerns about health and make sure that people feel safe and secure, while at the same time not letting those impact over much on the very reason that they're traveling in the first place, to have this experience.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been traveling quite a bit in the last 3 to 4 months. And I think early on, you went places where you definitely felt safe, but it was just cumbersome.
Yeah.
And our goal has been to create a very seamless experience. Part of it too is people should know that right now California, even though it's the most populous state in the country, 5th largest economy in the world, we actually have the lowest rate of COVID transmission in the United States. So I think our public health officials have done just an admirable job of how they've managed it. And I think we'd all agree, I mean, public and health officials and frontline healthcare workers, they're the real heroes of this story over the last almost 24 months now.
Adam Burke, I can't wait to get back to LA.
We can't wait to have you.
Well, I mean, listen, if I can get back to I'd love to go to the Super Bowl at some point, but it's something we can discuss at another time.
Or World Cup in 26.
Yeah, that seems very far away.
It does seem very far away.
Adam, a pleasure. Thank you very much.